The Galactic Coalition Academy floated in the cold darkness of space, a massive station where young soldiers from 100 different worlds came to train. It was a place of discipline, of order, of carefully controlled violence. But in the shadows of Deck 7, a different kind of order existed. An order built on fear and pain. Cadet 13 ruled that shadow world. The creature's true name was, and it belonged to a species called the Standing over 7 feet tall was a nightmare-given flesh. Its body was covered in thick chitin plates, black as deep space and harder than most metals. 4 arms extended from its torso, each ending in claws that could cut through steel. Its head was a horror of compound eyes and clicking mandibles that dripped with venom. On its home world, there were apex predators. They hunted everything. Nothing hunted them. Had brought that predator nature to the academy. For 2 years, it had terrorized the junior cadets. It started small at first: stolen food, cruel words, psychological games that left victims unable to sleep. But as time passed and no one stopped it, grew bolder. Bones were broken. Cadets were hospitalized. One young Tellurian had been so traumatized that he never spoke again. The instructors knew. Everyone knew. But the academy had a philosophy: the weak must be culled. If cadets could not survive a bully, how would they survive a real enemy? So they looked away. They pretended not to see the bruises and the tears. They ignored the screams that echoed through Deck 7 at night. Had gathered followers over time. Other predator species who enjoyed the violence. Weaker creatures who joined out of self-preservation, hoping that serving the monster would protect them from becoming its prey. Together, they controlled the lower decks like a criminal gang, demanding tribute and punishing anyone who dared to resist. On the day the human arrived, was in an especially good mood. It had just finished disciplining a young cadet who had looked at it wrong. The small creature was now curled in a corner, whimpering and clutching a broken arm. Followers laughed and congratulated their leader on another successful lesson. Then the announcement came over the station's communication system. Attention all personnel. A shuttle from the newly contacted planet Earth is now docking at Bay 7. Please extend appropriate welcome to our coalition member. Compound eyes flickered with interest. A new species meant new prey. It gestured to its followers, and together they made their way to the observation deck above the docking bay. The shuttle was small and simple, nothing impressive about its design. When the doors opened, leaned forward, eager to see what kind of creature Earth had produced. A single figure stepped out. Felt its mandibles click in confusion. The human was small, shorter than most species at the academy. It had no claws, no fangs, no armored plates. Its skin looked soft and fragile, easy to cut. It walked on 2 legs with a simple, unhurried pace. The only notable feature was its eyes, set forward on its face like a predator's, but the creature was clearly too weak to be any real threat. The human was a female, according to the data file had accessed. Her name was Park. She had dark hair pulled back from her face, and she wore a simple uniform that showed no weapons or defensive equipment. She looked around the docking bay with calm, steady eyes, taking in her new environment without any visible emotion. "That is our new coalition member," one of his followers asked, laughing. "It looks like food." "It looks like entertainment," replied, its voice a low rumble of anticipation. "The soft ones always scream the loudest." Another follower, a scaled reptilian named, shook its head. "I heard rumors about humans. They say Earth is a death world, Class 4. Made a sound of dismissal. "Look at it. No natural weapons, no armor, slow, weak. Whatever killed things on that planet, it was not that creature." Down below, Park had finished her inspection of the docking bay. An academy official approached her with a data pad, probably explaining where she would be staying and what her schedule would be. She listened politely, nodded a few times, and then followed the official toward the main corridor. As she walked, she passed beneath the observation deck. For just a moment her eyes lifted and met's compound gaze. The human did not flinch, did not look away. She simply observed, the way a scientist might observe an interesting insect. Then she continued walking, disappearing into the station's depths. Felt something strange, a tiny flicker of uncertainty that it quickly crushed. The human had stared at a warrior without fear. That was unusual. Most species trembled at the sight of kind, but the human's calm was probably just ignorance. She did not know what she was looking at. She did not understand the danger. She would learn. She has been assigned to Barracks 7C, reported, checking his data pad. That is your territory. Its mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among its kind. How convenient. I will welcome her personally tonight. The followers laughed and made jokes about what that welcome would involve. They talked about how quickly the human would break, about how loud she would cry, about how satisfying it would be to teach another soft creature its proper place in the galaxy's hierarchy. Listened to their chatter but said nothing more. It was already planning. The human's calm had been annoying. That calm would need to be destroyed, would break her spirit completely, turn her into a trembling servant who jumped at shadows. It would be a lesson to the entire academy about what happened to those who did not show proper respect. They were apex predators. They had conquered their world through violence and strength. Every species they encountered learned to fear them eventually. This human, this park, would be no different. As made its way back to its territory, it felt satisfaction warming its cold blood. New prey had arrived at the academy. Soft, weak, helpless prey. The hunt would begin tonight. It never occurred to that it might have made a mistake. That the human's calm was not ignorance but something else entirely. That those forward-facing eyes belonged to a predator far more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered. That mistake would cost everything. But that knowledge would come later. For now, Cadet 13 walked through its domain with absolute confidence, already tasting the fear it would soon create. The predator had chosen its prey. It did not know that the prey had also chosen it. Park spent her first day at the academy learning the layout of the station. She walked through corridors filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some floated in anti-gravity bubbles because they came from water worlds. She observed everything with quiet attention, memorizing paths and exits and the faces of those she passed. Other cadets stared at her with curiosity. Humans were new to the galactic community. Earth had only been contacted 6 months ago and was one of the first humans to leave her home world. She knew that everyone was watching her, trying to understand what kind of species humanity was. She did not mind the attention. She had expected it. What she had not expected was the fear she saw in some eyes. Not fear of her, but fear of something else. The younger cadets moved through certain corridors with their heads down and their bodies tense. They flinched at sudden sounds. They avoided eye contact with anyone larger than themselves. Recognized that behavior. She had seen it before, in different places, in different contexts. It was the behavior of prey animals who knew a predator was near. By evening, she understood the situation. A cadet named Han, a young Tellurian with blue-green skin and nervous eyes, had explained it while they ate together in the mess hall. He spoke in whispers, constantly looking over his shoulder. Cadet 13 controls Deck 7, he said. You must have seen it. Very tall black armor, 4 arms with claws. I saw it watching me when I arrived, replied calmly. His eyes went wide. You should transfer to different barracks. Request a room on Deck 4 or Deck 9. Anywhere but 7, please, for your own safety. Why, what does this Cadet 13 do? Was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled up his sleeve, revealing a scar that ran from his wrist to his elbow. The wound had healed badly, leaving twisted tissue behind. This was my welcome gift, he said quietly, 3 months ago, because I did not kneel fast enough. Looked at the scar. Her expression did not change, but something shifted behind her eyes. something cold and hard. And the instructors allow this. They say it builds character. They say the weak must learn to survive or die. His voice was bitter. But Cadet 13 chooses its victims carefully. It never attacks anyone whose species has powerful allies. Only the small, only the alone, only those who cannot fight back. Nodded slowly. I understand. So you will transfer? No. Stared at her. But, did you not hear what I said? Cadet 13 will hurt you. It has already claimed you as its next target. Everyone knows. You have to run. Smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. On my world, we have a long history with predators. Very long. Would you like to know how that history ended? Before could answer, a shadow fell over their table. Had arrived. The loomed over, its four arms spread wide to block any escape. Behind it, 6 followers formed a half circle, cutting off the rest of the mess hall. Other cadets quickly looked away, pretending not to see what was happening. They had learned that watching only drew attention. Human, said, its voice a deep vibration that felt in her chest. You did not come to pay respect when you arrived. This was a mistake. Set down her eating utensils. She turned in her seat to face the massive alien, looking up at it without standing. Her posture was relaxed, almost casual. I was not aware that respect was owed, she said. I thought this was a military academy, not a kingdom. His mandibles clicked rapidly. The sound was threatening, meant to trigger fear responses in prey species. Several nearby cadets shuddered at the noise. Did not react. You are in my territory now, Soft One growled. Everything on Deck 7 belongs to me, the food, the rooms, the cadets. It leaned closer, bringing its nightmare face within inches of us. You belong to me now, and the first lesson you will learn is obedience. Get on your knees. The mess hall was completely silent. Everyone was watching now, unable to look away. Had gone pale, his hands trembling beneath the table. Met's compound eyes. She studied the alien the way she had studied the docking bay earlier. Calm, analytical, unafraid. No, she said. The word fell like a stone into still water. Ripples of shock spread through the watching cadets. No one refused Cadet 13. No one. Was so surprised that it took a moment to respond. Then rage filled its voice. You dare refuse me. I will teach you pain, human. I will make you scream for days. It swung one clawed arm at her face. The strike was meant to cut deep, to leave permanent scars that would mark her as property forever. Moved. She did not move away from the attack. She moved toward it. Her hand came up and caught his wrist, redirecting the force of the blow past her head. In the same motion, she rose from her seat, stepped inside the A's guard, and drove her palm upward into the soft tissue beneath its mandibles. The impact was precise, surgical. It hit a nerve cluster that should not have known existed. Staggered backward, its followers scattering in confusion. Pain exploded through its face, the kind of pain it had never felt before. Its compound eyes struggled to focus on the small human who had just struck it. I said no, repeated. Her voice had not changed. She was not breathing hard. She did not look excited or frightened. She looked exactly as she had when she was eating dinner. Calm, controlled. She picked up her tray and walked past the stunned, heading for the door. The followers parted before her, too shocked to block her path. At the doorway, she paused and looked back. On my world, she said, we had predators too, big ones with claws and fangs and armored skin. They thought they were apex predators. She tilted her head slightly. We killed them. We killed all of them. And then we wore their skins as clothing. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the corridor. Behind her, finally recovered enough to stand straight. Its followers gathered around, asking if it was hurt, offering to chase the human down. But was not listening to them. It was staring at the doorway where it had vanished. For the first time in its life, had felt something it did not recognize. a cold sensation in its stomach, a strange tightness in its chest. Later, much later, would understand what that feeling was. It was the beginning of fear. In the mess hall, sat frozen at his table. His food was forgotten. His hands had stopped shaking. He was staring at the door with an expression of pure wonder. He had just seen the impossible. He had just seen Cadet 13 lose. And something told him that this was only the beginning. The days after the mess hall incident were strange ones for. Though it told itself that nothing had changed, the human had gotten lucky. She had surprised it, nothing more. Next time would be different. Next time would be ready, and the soft creature would learn its proper place. But the words felt hollow, even in its own mind. Began watching the human. It told itself this was research, preparation for the revenge it would soon take. It followed her through the station's corridors, observed her in the training halls, studied her from the shadows. What it saw confused it more with each passing day. Park trained differently than any species had encountered. In the combat halls, she did not rely on strength or speed or natural weapons. She had none of these advantages. Instead, she moved with a strange efficiency that struggled to understand. Every motion served a purpose. There was no wasted energy, no unnecessary movement. She flowed from one technique to another like water finding its path downhill. Watched her spar with a species known for their massive size and crushing strength. There was 3 times her weight and covered in thick muscle. It should have destroyed her in seconds. The fight lasted less than 10 seconds, but it was the human who won. She did not try to match this power. Instead, she used its own momentum against it, redirecting its attacks until the creature threw itself off balance. Then she struck once, twice, 3 times at joints and pressure points, and the collapsed. When she helped her opponent stand afterward, she was not even breathing hard. Its mandibles clicked nervously. It told itself that the had been careless, that the human had used tricks, that a real predator like Oa would never fall for such tactics. But doubt had taken root, and it continued to grow. The endurance trials came next. Cadets were required to run through a long course that wound through the station's outer decks. Different species had different expectations based on their biology. Were sprinters, capable of explosive speed but limited stamina. Most species were similar, built for quick hunts or quick escapes. Park ran the course, and then she ran it again and again. She did not stop. Long after species with superior physiology had collapsed from exhaustion, the human was still running. Her pace was not fast, but it was constant, unchanging, relentless. She ran like a machine, like something that did not understand the concept of giving up. Watched from the observation area, its compound eyes tracking the small figure as she completed lap after lap. Other cadets had gathered to watch as well, whispering among themselves. Some looked impressed, others looked disturbed. After 3 hours, an instructor finally ordered to stop. She obeyed, walking calmly to the recovery area. She was sweating and her face was flushed, but she was not gasping or trembling. She looked like she could have continued for hours more. That night, accessed the Academy's database and searched for information about humans. What it found made its chitin plates rattle with unease. Humans were persistent predators. The concept was nearly unknown in the galaxy. Most predators relied on ambush or speed. They caught their prey quickly or not at all. But humans had evolved differently. They hunted by following, by tracking, by walking after their prey for hours and days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion and fear. Read about ancient humans chasing deer across vast plains until the animals' hearts gave out. It read about humans tracking wounded prey for days without rest. It read about a hunting style that required no claws, no fangs, no venom, only patience, only endurance, only an absolute refusal to stop. The cold feeling in stomach grew stronger. The survival simulation came the following week. Cadets were dropped into a holographic jungle environment filled with dangerous predators. The goal was simple: survive for 3 days. Most cadets hid. They found shelter, avoided threats, and waited for extraction. Entered the simulation with its usual confidence. Though were born to environments like this, hunting through dense vegetation was in its blood. It decided to track the human, to observe her in a true survival situation, to find weaknesses it could exploit later. For 3 days, followed Park through the jungle. It watched her build shelter from nothing, weaving branches and leaves into structures that kept out rain and hid her from predators. It watched her create weapons from stones and sticks, tools that were simple but effective. It watched her set traps that caught small animals for food. But most disturbing of all, it watched her hunt. The simulation's predators were dangerous. Large creatures with claws and teeth and killing instincts. They should have been threats to a small, soft human with no natural weapons. Hunted them. She tracked them through the jungle with frightening skill, reading signs that could not see. Broken branches, disturbed soil, patterns in animal behavior. She found their nests and their trails. And then she killed them, one by one, using traps and weapons and techniques that turned their own strength against them. By the second day, the predators had learned to avoid her. They fled when they sensed her approach. They hid in their dens and refused to come out. The prey had become the hunter had become the prey. On the third day, was following her through dense vegetation when her voice came from directly behind it. I know you have been following me. Spun around, claws raised for combat. Stood 3 meters away, leaning against a tree with her arms crossed. She looked relaxed, comfortable, like she was exactly where she wanted to be. For 3 days now, she continued. You are not subtle. Your species makes too much noise when it moves, and you smell like metal and something sour. Compound eyes darted around, looking for escape routes. How had she gotten behind it? There were ambush predators. Stealth was their greatest skill. No prey had ever detected while it was hunting. What are you? The question escaped before could stop it. Smiled, it was not a friendly expression. I am human, and I think you are beginning to understand what that means. She pushed off from the tree and walked toward. Her pace was slow, unhurried, the walk of something that knew it had all the time in the world. We are persistence predators, she said. We do not chase prey because we are faster. We chase prey because we do not stop, ever. We follow until our prey collapses from exhaustion, until their hearts give out from fear, until they simply cannot run anymore. She stopped a few feet from. There was frozen, unable to move, unable to look away from those predator eyes. On my world we hunted everything. Mammoths, lions, bears, wolves, each other. We did not have claws or armor, so we made tools, we made fire. We looked at the darkness and decided we would conquer it. We looked at the cold and decided we would survive it. We looked at every predator that threatened us and decided we would kill it. Another step closer, actually stepped backward. You think you are an apex predator because you have natural weapons, because your species evolved claws and armor and venom. His voice dropped low. But humans became apex predators because we decided to be, because we refused to accept any other position in the food chain. She reached out and tapped one claw against his chest plate, though flinched at the touch. I am not your prey, said quietly. I never was, and somewhere deep inside you are beginning to understand that. You are beginning to feel something you have never felt before. She turned and walked away into the jungle, leaving alone with its thoughts. The cold feeling in stomach had a name now. It was fear. And it was growing. Combat assessment week arrived at the academy and the station hummed with nervous energy. This was the time when cadets proved themselves through formal combat trials. Rankings were adjusted. Reputations were made and destroyed. For many, it was the most important week of the year. For it should have been a celebration. In previous years, they had dominated the combat assessments, crushing opponents and reinforcing its position as the most feared cadet on the station. No one dared challenge it. No one wanted to face those claws. But this year was different. Felt the change in how other cadets looked at it. The absolute terror was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Curiosity. Hope. Word of the mess hall incident had spread through the station like fire through dry grass. Everyone knew that the human had struck Cadet 13. Everyone knew that it staggered. Everyone was watching to see what would happen next. And was distracted. The fear that had planted itself in its stomach had grown into something it could not ignore. It dreamed of those forward-facing eyes. It heard its calm voice in quiet moments. It found itself checking corners before entering rooms, something an apex predator should never need to do. Its followers noticed the change. They whispered among themselves when they thought was not listening. The predator was weakening. The predator was afraid. Perhaps it was time to find a new leader. Knew it needed to do something dramatic, something that would restore its reputation and crush the hope that was spreading through the junior cadets. It needed to remind everyone why they feared Cadet 13. It decided to target Han. The young Tellurian had become a symbol of the resistance. He had been seen eating with the human, talking with her, even laughing with her in public. He had stopped flinching when followers walked past. He had started looking other cadets in the eye again. This could not be allowed. Found alone in a training hall on the 4th day of assessment week, the Tellurian was practicing basic combat forms, moving through positions with careful concentration. He did not see enter. He did not hear the A's claws clicking against the floor. Little prey purred, announcing its presence. Spun around, his blue-green skin going pale. The old fear returned to his eyes instantly. Some instincts were too deep to erase with a few weeks of hope. No one to protect you now, continued, advancing slowly. It wanted to enjoy this, wanted to taste the terror radiating from its victim. Your human friend is not here. Your new courage has abandoned you. You are alone as you always were. Backed away until he hit the wall. His eyes darted around, searching for escape routes, finding none. His hands trembled at his sides. Please, he whispered, I did not do anything. You dared to hope, snarled. That was your crime, and now I will remind everyone what happens to those who forget their place. It raised one clawed arm, ready to add new scars to his collection. Actually, said a voice from the doorway, there is someone to protect him. Froze, it knew that voice. It had heard that voice in its dreams. Park walked into the training hall. She was not alone. Behind her came a group of cadets from a dozen different species, recognized many of them as its former victims, the who had lost to in sparring, a group of small Tellurians who usually hid whenever appeared, 2 who had lost family members to a hunting parties generations ago. Even its own follower stood at the back of the group, refusing to meet its former leader's eyes. What is this? Demanded, trying to keep its voice steady. This is consequences, replied. She walked forward until she stood between and, I have been talking to people, learning about you, about everything you have done, the bones you broke, the minds you damaged, the lives you destroyed because no one was strong enough to stop you. She crossed her arms. Her expression was calm, but there was something cold in her eyes, something that made one step backward. On Earth we have a saying, pick on someone your own size. You have spent years targeting the weak and the alone. You have never faced someone who could fight back, until now. You think this rabble frightens me, tried to laugh, but the sound came out wrong. You think a collection of prey animals can threaten a warrior. No, shook her head slowly. I think I frighten you. I have seen how you look at me now. The uncertainty, the doubt, the fear you try to hide. She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. I formally challenge you, Cadet 13, single combat academy rules, right here, right now. The training hall went silent. Formal challenges were rare at the academy. They were binding under coalition law. Once issued, they could not be refused without severe consequences. A cadet who declined a formal challenge lost all status, all rank, all respect. For a species like the it would mean social death. Had no choice, it had to accept. "I will tear you apart," it snarled, trying to find its old confidence. "I will make you regret ever coming to this station." Simply nodded. "Begin when you are ready." Did not wait. It launched itself at the human with all its predator speed, all four arms extended, claws gleaming under the training hall lights. It would end this quickly. It would prove to everyone that it was still the apex predator, that the human was nothing special, that fear was the only truth that mattered. Moved. She did not try to block its claws. She did not try to match its strength. Instead, she flowed around its attacks like water around stone. Every strike missed by centimeters. Every lunge found only empty air. She was always where expected her to be, and then she was somewhere else entirely. And while attacked, struck back. Small hits at first. A palm strike to a joint, a kick to the back of a knee, fingers jabbed into gaps between chitin plates. Each blow was precise, targeting nerve clusters and weak points that should have been secret. Each blow sent pain radiating through his body. "You know why you are losing?" asked, not even breathing hard. "Because you have never faced real resistance, never had to adapt. You relied on fear and size your whole life." She ducked under a wild swing and drove her elbow into his side. "Humans learned to kill things bigger than us before we invented writing. Mammoths that weighed 10 tons. Predators with fangs as long as my forearm. We did not have natural weapons, so we created them. We did not have natural armor, so we learned to never get hit." Another strike, this one to the throat, staggered, gasping for air. "You are not special. You are not even difficult. You are just another predator who thought size and claws made you invincible. My ancestors killed hundreds of predators like you." The fight had lasted almost 4 minutes now, was bleeding from a dozen small wounds where strikes had found gaps in its armor. Its movements were slower, clumsier. Pain clouded its thoughts. Fear clouded its judgment. It lunged one final time, desperate and uncontrolled. Caught its primary fighting arm, twisted. The crack echoed through the training hall. Collapsed, screaming in agony. Its arm was bent at an angle that should have been impossible, the joint completely destroyed. It tried to rise, but its body refused to obey. Stood over it, looking down with those calm, predator eyes. "Stay down," she said quietly. "It is over." Looked up at the human, small, soft. No claws, no fangs, no armor, and utterly, completely terrifying. The watching cadet stood in stunned silence. Then, slowly, hand began to clap. Others joined him. The sound built until it filled the training hall, a thundering applause that marked the end of Cadet 13's reign of terror. Lay on the floor, broken and defeated, and finally understood what the human had tried to tell it. Humans were not prey. They had never been prey, and had made the worst mistake of its life by treating them as such. 3 months passed, and the Galactic Coalition Academy was not the same place it had been before. The change was visible everywhere. Cadets walked through the corridors with their heads up and their shoulders straight. Laughter echoed in spaces that had once been filled with fearful silence. Groups mixed freely, with species that had never spoken before, sharing meals and stories and training tips. The shadow that had covered Deck 7 for so long had finally lifted. At the center of this transformation was Park. She had not asked for leadership. She had not demanded followers, but both had come to her anyway. The cadets who had witnessed the fight in the training hall spread the story to everyone who would listen. Other victims came forward with their own tales. A movement grew organically, built not on fear but on a simple idea that had introduced to the station. The strong should protect the weak, not prey upon them. It was a human concept, she explained when asked. On Earth, communities survived because they looked out for each other. The hunter shared meat with those who could not hunt. The warrior defended those who could not fight. This was not weakness. This was strength of a different kind. The strength of a pack, a tribe, a species that understood that unity was more powerful than any individual predator. The Academy's instructors had tried to punish for the fight. She had broken his arm badly enough to require medical treatment. She had challenged the station's hierarchy. She had disrupted the natural order. But they could not touch her. The combat had been a formal challenge conducted under coalition law. Everything had done was legal. More importantly, the cadets had begun to organize. If was punished unfairly, they would respond. The instructors recognized a shift in power when they saw one. They backed down. Han had changed the most. The young Tellurian who had once hidden in corners now walked openly through the station. He trained with every morning, learning the human techniques she was willing to teach. He was not a natural fighter, but that did not matter. Taught him that courage was not about being unafraid. It was about being afraid and standing up anyway. "I spent so long being a victim," told her one evening as they sat in the observation deck, watching stars drift past the station windows. "I thought that was my destiny, that some people were born to be prey and others were born to be predators, that there was nothing I could do to change it." "That is what predators want you to believe," replied. "It makes their job easier, but it is a lie. Every creature has the capacity to fight back. Sometimes they just need someone to show them how. Like you showed us." Smiled. "I did not show you anything you did not already have inside you. I just reminded you it was there." More humans arrived at the Academy as the months passed. Earth had been impressed by the reports of his performance, and the coalition was eager to recruit more of this strange new species. They came in small groups at first, then larger ones. Each one was like, calm, polite, absolutely terrifying when provoked. The other species did not know what to make of them. Humans were a contradiction. They were small and soft and lacked natural weapons. But they moved through the station with a quiet confidence that suggested they knew something others did not. They made friends easily. They laughed and joked and played games. And then they went to the training halls and demonstrated capabilities that made hardened warriors uncomfortable. One human, a male named, broke an academy record in the endurance trials by running for 18 hours straight. When asked how he did it, he simply shrugged and said that on Earth, this was considered a moderate morning jog. Another human, a female named, was cornered by 3 former followers of who had not learned their lesson. She put all 3 in the medical bay in under 30 seconds. She apologized afterward and offered to help them with their training once they recovered. The galaxy was beginning to understand what humans were. Not prey, never prey. Something else entirely. And in the corner of the mess hall, eating alone, Cadet 13 watched it all happen. Had lost everything in that training hall fight. Its followers had abandoned it. Its reputation had been destroyed. Its arm had healed, but the damage to its spirit never would. Other cadets no longer feared it. Some even laughed when it walked past. The great predator of Deck 7 had become a joke. Did not try to rebuild its power. It did not seek revenge. It simply existed, day after day, a shadow of what it had once been. Sometimes it caught itself staring at the humans who now filled the station, watching them eat and laugh and train, trying to understand how such small, soft creatures had conquered it so completely. One day, Park sat down across from it in the mess hall. Flinched at her approach, it could not help itself. The fear was too deep now, carved into its very being. "Relax," said calmly. "I am not here to hurt you." "Then why are you here?" Was quiet for a moment, studying with those forward-facing eyes. Then she spoke. "Because I want you to understand something. What happened to you was not about strength or weakness. It was about choice. You chose to be a predator who hurt others. You chose to build your power on fear and pain. And when someone finally challenged those choices, you had nothing else to fall back on." Said nothing. Its mandibles hung loose and still. Humans were not always kind, continued. Our history is filled with cruelty, with people like you who hurt others because they could. But we learned, eventually, that this path leads nowhere good. That true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. She stood, picking up her tray. You have a choice now. You can spend the rest of your time here feeling sorry for yourself, or you can try to become something better, something more than what you were. She paused at the edge of the table. I hope you choose wisely. She walked away, leaving alone with its thoughts. They sat in silence for a long time, staring at the table. Around it, the mess hall buzzed with conversation and laughter. Cadets from a dozen species shared meals together. Humans moved among them like they had always belonged here. And former terror of Deck 7, former apex predator, former Cadet 13, finally understood something it should have realized long ago. The universe was changing. Humans were not just a new species joining the galactic community. They were a force that would reshape everything, not through conquest or violence, but through something more powerful, through the simple idea that creatures could choose to be more than their instincts. That strength could be used to protect instead of destroy, that the future did not have to repeat the mistakes of the past. Looked at its claws, at the weapons it had been born with, at the tools of a predator. Then it looked at the humans sitting nearby, at their soft hands and their strange eyes and their easy laughter. And for the first time in its life, wondered what it would be like to build something instead of breaking it. The answer would take years to find. But in that moment, in that crowded mess hall on a space station far from Earth, the first seed of change took root in a predator's heart. And across the galaxy, without knowing it, 1,000 other predators began to feel the same cold fear that had broken Cadet 13. Humans were coming, and the universe would never be the same again.